And now we're moving to the Bleaksword, which was also known in the original game as the Blackguard. And I see some interesting things here. So the Bleaksword, as everything else so far, has 3 hard specializations. The first one is called Dread Knight, and it's a tank. The second one, Corsair, and it's an offensive support. And then the last one is called Blackguard, and it's a defensive support. All right, Bleaksword it is. Dread Knight hard specialization. So we still have the hatred mechanism. Hatred goes up to 100. You generate 5 hatred whenever you use an ability. You lose 3 hatred whenever you are attacked, and there is 1 second internal cooldown. Things to note here: A, you lose points when you're attacked. Point B, you gain hatred whenever you use an ability, not whenever you attack. Hateful Strike, it's a no-cost instant skill. It's your basic attack. You deal 4% melee attack power and 30 piercing damage to target enemy. You generate 22 action points. Pitiless Strike deals 21% melee attack power and 280 piercing damage to target enemy. Bolstering Anger costs 35 hatred. It's instant with no other cost. Groupmates within 100 feet of you gain a blessing for 8 seconds. For the duration, they will have their block enhance increased by 35%. Groupmates within 100 feet of you gain an enhancement for 60 seconds. For the duration, they will gain 1 stack of enhanced toughness every 10 seconds. So this skill, sorry, because I was reading something on the chat. So this skill does 2 things at the same time. First one is 8 seconds blessing, so where you gain enhanced block by 35%. And the second one, you gain an enchantment for 60 seconds. For the duration, you gain 1 stack of enhanced toughness every 10 seconds. So it gives you a lot of defense there, block and toughness over time. Guard. Now, this is something, if you've never seen Interbellum stuff before, Guard works differently. You apply Guard to a target groupmate. When you are within 30 feet of them, they will gain 50% of your armor, resistance, and block. So you lose all that and you give them to your Guard target. You will lose these stats for the duration of the Guard and for 5 seconds after the effect is broken. So even if you remove it to go somewhere else, somebody else, or they go out of range and that is broken, you still don't have your stats back instantly. Crippling Anger deals 17% melee attack power, it's instant, and 227 impact damage, and applies ensnared to the target. That is a 30% slow for 16 seconds. Exile, instant again, knocks the enemy away and applies immovable, so that's the name of the debuff, so you can't punt them all the time. Elite Training, no cost instant cast, but it does cost 35 hatred. Groupmates within 100 feet gain a blessing for 8 seconds. For the duration, they will have 1 second faster cast times, and also groupmates within 100 feet gain an enchantment for 60 seconds. For that duration, they will gain 50% pushback immunity. So we do have a block and toughness enhancement, and we also have 1 buff for casters. We are on a break. Bloody ads. Man, these ads on Twitch just take out the momentum, you know. Anyways, what is it? A couple more seconds. All right, now everybody's back from the ads. We can carry on. Armor of Eternal Servitude. No cost, instant 20-second cooldown. You gain 3 stacks of a buff for 8 seconds. For the duration, you gain 30% dodge per stack, so that's 90%. And you lose 1 stack each time you dodge. Alright, so every time you dodge, you lose 1 stack, but if you don't dodge at all, it still go away after 8 seconds. Alignment of Nagaroth, the first tactic. Whenever you use the basic attack, all group mates within 100 feet that have this tactic will gain 670 critical hit rating for 4 seconds. Bathing in blood, you are healed by 7% of the damage you deal. Thirst of Death. Critical hits generate 5 additional hatred. This effect can only happen once every 1 second. Yes. Driven by Hate. Abilities which spend hatred would generate 125 action points for you. Hateful Strike no longer generates action points. These are the tactics we're going to start with. The Dread Knight can equip swords and shields. And the morals you're going to start with in this hard specialization is Hedgehog. Morale 1, all group mates within 100 feet gain 3 stack of enhanced block. Champion Challenge applies a debuff to target enemy and yourself for 10 seconds. Movement speed is reduced to 0 for the duration. Morale 3, Distracting Bellow. Up to 48 enemies within 30 feet of you receive a debuff. For 10 seconds, they cannot benefit from cover. Very good when talking about combining that with Zerg Basting abilities. Immaculate Defense, Morale 4, groupmates within 100 feet gain 25 stacks of a buff for 20 seconds. Each stack grants 3% damage reduction. A stack is removed each time they are attacked by an ability. 4 additional stacks are removed if the ability is single target. That's what you're going to start with if you choose to play a Bleaksword in the Dread Knight hard specializations. More specific here, see how things are. Bloodforged Plate Mail, passive with 2 ranks. Armor of Eternal Servitude now grants 4 stacks on use. Ooh. Armor of Eternal Servitude, 3 stacks. Oh, now it gives more. Nice. We need more points. Next tactic. Stabilized, increase your mass by 1. Hate flows through you. Cost 35 hatred. It's instant cast. Crewmates within 100 feet of you gain a blessing for 8 seconds. For the duration... Oh, you bastard! You scared me! And I have the speakers loud. Fucking hell. I had them like at 60%. I was watching a movie. Alright, your groupmates gain a blessing for 8 seconds. For the duration, they will have the healing received increased by 20%. Groupmates with 100 feet of you gain an enchantment for 60 seconds. For the duration, they will gain 1 stack of enhanced willpower for every 10 seconds. So basically, the first component increases your healing, and the second is buffing the healers to do more healing. Hi, Star. How you doing, buddy? Blast of Hatred, passive with 4 ranks. Whenever you spend hatred, up to 9 enemies within 30 feet of you will have a 6-second alignment. For that duration, their adrenaline regen will be reduced by 3 by 12. This is a morale drain. Well, not morale drain, but it reduces the time that it takes for them to build up morals. So every time you use hatred, 30 feet around you. You're a tank, you're going to be at the front, so you're going to screw somebody up for sure. I'm good, Star. Thanks for asking, dude. Yeah, we're just going through the Dark Elves on Interbellum server, so all good, all good. Choking Fury, Morale 1, applies silence to your target. Shielded by Hate, tactic. Every 3 seconds, you will gain 800 block rating, and for every 30 hatred that you have for 3 seconds. Every 3 seconds, you gain 800 block rating. And for every 30 hatred that you have for 3 seconds. I don't understand this one, but I suppose you just get blocked. I'll leave it at that. The timing and the seconds are confusing me a bit. Improved basic attack. Your basic attack deals 75% more damage. You can buff it all the way up to 150. Distract. It's an insta-cast with 10-second cooldown. Jumps the target for the next 3 seconds, interrupting the next ability cast. Of course, everybody wants to have that as a tank. Filled with Fury, Morale 2, generates 100 hatred. That's good to have for emergencies, I suppose. As the Morale 2 is not too difficult to get there. Now, if you do get Distract, though, you can unlock Improved Distract, which now will work up to 23 additional enemies within 20 feet of the target you choose, as long as those targets do not have cover. So you gotta see about hold the line and the tank positioning there, if you're gonna use that one. Next tactic we can pick further down is Enrage's Bidding. Every 2 seconds, all detoned effects are dispelled from you. In addition, you deal 50% additional damage to enemies who have Vigilance active. Vigilance is a Dintant that some classes have because the different names for different classes. Okay, the clarification there that I got confused with this tactic. So you have 0 to 29 hatred, you gain nothing for 3 seconds. If you have 30 to 59 hatred, you gain 8% block for 3 seconds. If you have 699, you gain 16% block for 3 seconds. If you have 100, you gain 24 block for 3 seconds. The effect checks how much hatred you have. Oh, it checks every 3 seconds. Okay, thank you. So what I just read goes with what I have highlighted there. That's what it means with the every 3 seconds 800 block rating. Okay. Thank you, Ramasee. And it's everything we've seen. Next skill we can pick is Force of Fury. Cost 35 hatred. Groupmates within 100 feet gain a blessing for 8 seconds. For the duration, they will gain 15 adrenaline regen. Also, groupmates with 100 feet gain an enchantment for 60 seconds. For that duration, they will gain 2 AP regen. Pretty much the same thing as, you know, the auras and the enchantments Knights and Chosens had. But if you choose this Force of Fury, you can also unlock a tactic called Crash of the Week. The AP regen value of Force of Fury is increased by 3. So more AP regen if you have the tactic on, if you want to be more supportive as a tank. Engage is passive with 3 ranks. Enemies that you deal direct damage to have their outgoing damage reduced by 6% at rank 3 for 5 seconds. So everyone you hit, or anyone you hit, their damage goes down. That includes AoE skills, so I think that's something useful for every tank to have. Efforts redoubled. Passive, again with 4 ranks. Whenever you spend hatred, if your guard is not active, you will gain 10% movement speed for 4 seconds. That can go all the way up to 40% for 4 seconds. Next line, Line Breaker, career tactic. You gain 1 mass for 8 seconds after spending hatred. Reminder again, mass is a statistic that controls how easy or how hard it is for you to be CC'd and how long the CCs last on you. The higher the number, the less they last. The lower the number, the longer they last. Hold the line. Groupmates within 50 feet behind you have cover. Behind you is 180, guys, okay? 180. Have cover from all enemies up to 100 feet in front of you. People 50 feet behind you from enemies 100 feet in front of you. Cover reduces the damage of area of effect attacks by 25%. In addition, provide immunity to some effect. Zodiac Baxting abilities, most of them require, for them to work, the people you're hitting, they must have not cover. So it affects the people in front of the tank and protects the people behind the tank, right? 180. So if you flank them and you're behind the tank and you shoot them, they have no cover, right? For cover to work, you have to attack the guys behind the tank from the front. So flanking becomes important into tactics if you want things to work. I think every tank will have this. Band Together. It's a passive with 5 ranks. Groupmates within 30 feet of you will have their damage reduction increased by 2%. This effect is suppressed for 5 seconds whenever you are hit by single target ability. So this is also good for tank. You sit around, everybody 30 feet around, you get less 6% damage. They receive 6% less damage. And if somebody decides to hit you with a single target ability, it's very specific, single target ability, not a spell or just normal damage, whatever single target ability, that effect that you protect everybody by reducing the incoming damage by 6% goes to sleep for 5 seconds, which means you can no longer ignore the tank. You can't leave the tank sitting there because you're already losing 6%. And if effectively protects 5 people, that is 30% less damage that you're giving out to that group. So what we used to do, like, again, leave the tank for the end, it's not dealing any damage or whatever. Now it becomes a must that somebody has to spend some time on the tank, at least every 5 seconds, to do something with it. You can no longer ignore anyone because healers are dealing damage. Tanks are providing a lot of defenses that you can counter by attacking them specifically. DPS, you can't ignore them because they're kicking your ass. Supports, you can because they do massive debuffs or buffs. So you gotta deal with everybody now. Murderous Prowess, Morale 3, you gain 50% critical hit chance and accuracy for 20 seconds. Masochist, this is a renowned tactic. Whenever you are attacked while your guard is active, you will gain 15 adrenaline per second for 3 seconds. Also pretty damn good, because now it gives you an extra reason to guard somebody. You gain more morale, you do more stuff. Murderous Wrath tactic, your abilities cost 5 less hatred. Life of Dread with 4 ranks passive again. Whenever you spend hatred, you will gain 3% damage reduction for 8 seconds. And if I had more points, if we max this one out, you will gain 12% damage reduction for 8 seconds whenever you spend hatred. For a frontline tank with a shield and a sword, pretty handy. Spiteful Slam, this is your knockdown. You get a knockdown on this. Did we have a punt on this one? I don't remember seeing one. Or did we have one up here? Oh yeah, we do. Exile. Knock your enemy away. So you get this is your knockback. And down here we have a knockdown. Furious Howl. Morale 4. Apply silence up to 48 enemies within 30 feet. 48 enemies within 30 feet. I suppose this falls really into the lore with Bleaksword, Blackguards, where the anti-spell silence everybody. Simmering Anger. Cost 35 hatred. Groupmates within 100 feet gain a blessing for 8 seconds. For the duration, they will have their AP cost reduced by 50%. Additionally, groupmates within 100 feet gain an enchantment for 60 seconds. For the duration, they will gain 450 HP every 4 seconds. And finally, Chains of Hatred, the Zodiac Busting ability. Up to 48 enemies within 30 feet of you have their movement speed reduced by 90% for 4 seconds. Does not affect targets that have cover from you. Nice slow. I think that will be one of the hardest ones to use because you have to bypass all the tanks to actually see an effect. But it is what it is, and we'll see what happens when we get our hands on the game. So this is the first hard specialization for the Bleaksword, previously known as the Blackguard, and it's a tank hard specialization. Quick reminder, in Interbellum, you don't mix and match. You pick one hard specialization and you play that one. Next path you could possibly choose if you choose to play a Bleaksword would be the second hard specialization called the Crosshair, and it's an offensive support. The mechanic of hatred remains the same. But for those just joining us, hatred goes up to 100. You generate 5 hatred whenever you use an ability. Tooltips Interbellum are very specific. And you lose 3 hatred whenever you are attacked with a 1 second internal cooldown. You start with Hateful Strike again. It's a basic attack that deals 4% melee attack power and 30 piercing damage to target enemy, and you generate 22 action points. Pitiless Strike, you deal 21% melee attack power, 280 piercing damage to the enemy. Elite Training is your first skill that uses hatred, 35 hatred cost. Groupmates within 100 feet gain a blessing for 8 seconds. For the duration, they will have 1 second faster cast times and a 60-second enchantment, and for that duration, they will gain 50% pushback immunity. Banish Weakness, I think that's a new one. It's a 45 action point skill with insta-cast. It deals 15% melee attack power and 204 piercing damage to target enemy. Dispels 1 affliction from your defensive target if they are within 100 feet. Horrific Wound. Off the global cooldown, 24 action points instacast, deals 15% melee attack power, 204 piercing damage to target enemy, has 1 charge and generates a charge every 8 seconds. So only has maximum 1 charge at this point. Okay. So we can use this every 8 seconds, so it has an 8-second cooldown effectively. Okay. We've seen similar mechanism on the elves, the Azure, the high elves. I'm assuming there will be more stuff underneath, we can make more charges later because we've seen that before. Spiteful Slam, this is your knockdown. Crushing Anger, cost 35 hatred. Groupmates with 100 feet get a blessing for 8 seconds. For those 8 seconds, they have the critical hit chance increased by 15%. Additionally, they gain an enchantment for 60 seconds, and for those 60 seconds, they gain 1 stack of a hand's ballistic skill every 10 seconds. So we had here a buff for casters, and then we have a buff for ranged units. Armor of Eternal Servitude, you gain 3 stacks of a buff for 8 seconds. For the duration, you gain 30% dodge per stack, and you lose 1 stack each time you dodge. Suppose this is the version of Deton, but you just get it for dodge. Alignment of Nagaroth and Bathing in Blood is exactly the same. Thirst of Death, critical hits generate 5 additional hatred. This effect can only trigger once per second, and Driven by Hate abilities with Spend Hatred will generate 125 action points for you. Hateful Strike no longer generates action points. In this specialization, you can yield dual yield swords. So the Blackguard as a tank gets swords and shields. As an offensive support, it uses dual yield swords. The morals you're going to start with, because the first 2 lines is always your default skills that you start with. Morale 1, Hedgehog, all groupmates within 100 feet gain 3 stacks of a hand's block. Champion's Challenge. Applies a debuff to target enemy and yourself for 10 seconds. Movement speed is reduced to 0. Force of Will. All groupmates within 100 feet gain a buff for 10 seconds. Action point cost reduced by 75% of the duration. And of course, Frenzied Slaughter. Morale 4. All groupmates with 100 feet gain a buff for 15 seconds, which gives you plus 40% outgoing damage and plus 50% reduced, and 50% reduced cooldowns for the duration. That's how we're going to start on the Crosshair as an offensive support. Our first skill that we can pick extra is Instrument of War with 3 ranks and it's a passive. Your outgoing damage is increased by 2% per 30 hatred, and you can take that all the way up to 6% per 30 hatred. So 369, 18% if you are at 100% hatred. It's not too bad. Fleet-footed, your base movement is increased by 15%, you lose 1 mass. Then we get Force of Fury a lot sooner than the tank does. It costs 35 hatred. Groupmates within 100 feet gain a blessing for 8 seconds. For those 8 seconds, they gain 15 adrenaline regen. Reminder, adrenaline is the morale currency. And also they gain an enchantment for 60 seconds, and they will gain 2 AP regen. Horrific Training, again passive. Horrific Wounds now have 2 charges. You can get all the way up to 3 charges. Horrific Wounds is off the global cooldown. And it has no cooldown itself, so you can spam it. And now you just gave it 3 uses. And that deals 15% of your melee attack power plus 204 piercing damage to the enemy. And besides the passive, it still regenerates 1 every 8 seconds. But once you have 3, you can spam it off the global cooldown along with another skill. So it's a good combo for bursting, I suppose. Choking Fury. It's a morale 1. Applies silence to the target. And then we go to the next line. Feeding on Weakness. It's a tactic. Horrific Wounds has a 100% increased chance to critically hit. Whenever you are critically hit, you will gain 1 charge for Horrific Wounds. Oh, things getting a bit interesting there. Brutal Smash. Pitiless Strike has a 50% chance on use to generate a charge for Horrific Wounds. I can see where this is going with the tactics, man. You're going to be spamming that no cooldown of GCD ability to burst and do a lot of damage, increasing your chances to generate the charges for free as you're doing things. Improved Slam. Speed of Slam now deals 7% melee attack power and 90 impact. If we max it out, its damage goes up to 21%. This is your knockdown with a 20-second cooldown. I don't know if you want to put so many points as damage on a skill with a 20-second cooldown, but it's there. Vigilance. This is your Deed Haunt. You receive 50% less damage, but your outgoing damage is also reduced by 90% for 7 seconds. Now, if you choose to have that skill, you can also unlock Improved Vigilance, which has 3 ranks. If you put all 3 ranks, you will reduce your outgoing damage by 45%. Either way, whether you do 50% less damage or 90% damage, you're still useless if you lose 50%, because you have to add on top of that any defenses the other guy is going to have, any mitigation from tanks. So personally, I really wouldn't take this. Filled with Fury, it's a morale 2 and you just generate 100 hatred instantly. Next line, we get 2 more tactics. First one is Enraged Beating. Every 2 seconds, all Deton's effects are dispelled from you. In addition, you deal 50% additional damage to enemies who have Vigilance active. So somebody as a Deton, they have Vigilance, and you have this tactic. You remove Deton, by default, and then you do more damage to them. It's important to notice that it says Vigilance, because if we just go back on the Sorcerer, for example, where is this? Like the Witch Elf has Vigilance, but the Sorc has a different mechanic. I think it was called I'm trying to find one. I'm picking all the wrong classes, don't I? There we go. Like the Archmage, for example, it has Walk Between Worlds. That's his Deton, right? It won't work. It only will work against classes that have Vigilance as a Deton. Usually melee classes have Vigilance, if I remember. So that tactic will work if we're talking about melee classes. Now I have to put some more points here to go back down where I was. Next tactic is Crimson Death. Whenever you spend hatred, all group mates within 100 feet will gain 1 stack of enhanced potency. Let's put some more points to unlock here a few things. Improve Pitiless Strike. Pitiless Strike now costs 3 less action points. Yeah, okay. Improve Basic Attack. It has 5 ranks. If you max it out, your basic attack will be dealing 375% additional damage. This is the attack that you also generate your action points. Wave of Scorn. Costs 35 hatred. Group mates with 100 feet gain a blessing for 8 seconds. For the duration, up to 9 enemies within 30 feet of your allies take 3% melee attack power and 40 impact damage every 2 seconds. And group mates within 100 feet gain an enchantment, and for that duration, each time they deal damage with a basic attack, they will deal 3% melee attack power and 40 piercing damage. So, passive AoE around them plus extra damage. If you take Wave of Scorn, you unlock 2 things. First is the tactic Crash of Vitality. Wave of Scorn blessing effects will last 2 additional seconds. And the other thing you can pick is Improved Wave of Scorn with 3 ranks as a passive, where it says Wave of Scorn deals 5% additional damage. You can take it all the way up to 15. Then Murderous Prowess, Morale 3, which is racial. You gain 50% critical hit chance and accuracy for 20 seconds. As your renowned tactic, you get Dissipation Expert. Whenever you use an ability that removes a buff or debuff, you will gain 15 adrenaline per second for 3 seconds if you really want to pump your morale. Next skill we can pick, Monstrous Rending. Instant cast 75 action points. Deals 18% melee attack power and 225 piercing damage to target enemy 2 times. Deals an additional attack per command enchantment active on you. So all those enchantments buffs I was reading, if you have them on you, you do more attacks. Next tactic you can pick is Murderous Wrath. Your abilities cost 5 less hatred. Monstrous Ruin, it's a passive. Whenever you spend hatred, group mates within 100 feet will gain 2% outgoing damage for 8 seconds. It has 4 ranks. So if we max this one out, that makes 9% outgoing damage for 8 seconds every time you spend hatred. You buff your group mates. For Ferocious Hole, Morale 4, applies silence up to 48 enemies within 30 feet. Cry of War, 35 hatred. Group mates within 100 feet gain a blessing for 8 seconds. For those 8 seconds, they will gain 20% increased movement speed. Additionally, they gain an enchantment for 60 seconds. and they will dispel the next ensnare or rooted applied to them. This effect checks every 2 seconds. So once they have this blessing, this enchantment, they have 60 seconds, remove one ensnare or root, and it will check every 2 seconds. If you're very lucky, it will be instant. Very lucky. And then as the Zerg passing ability, the Corsairs, the offensive support of the Bleaksword, gets Whirlwind. It's a 3-second channel. You deal 6% melee attack power and 20 piercing damage up to 96 enemies within 30 feet of you every 0.5 seconds. So that's 6 attacks, I suppose. Every enemy hit will give you a stack of a buff that gives you 10% outgoing damage up to 100 stacks. Ramasee, I don't have a good memory, but I think there's might be something missing from this tooltip. Isn't the buff that gives you 10% outgoing damage up to 100 stacks lasts for 1 second? Have a look at that if it needs to be implemented. And this concludes the second hard specialization of the Bleaksword. You also might know him as the Blackguard, which is the offensive support. That leaves us with the actual name Blackguard, which is the third hard specialization, and it is a defensive support. We've seen here a lot of buffs and a lot of blessings and enchantments that we're giving out. I think they're a little bit more than the tank does, for more damage, more mobility, more things, and we have a lot of control. So let's see what the defensive support does. Again, the mechanism remains the same with the hatred. Your basic attack again is Hateful Strike with a 4% melee attack power and 30 piercing and generating 22 action points. Pitiless Strike, again the same, 21 melee attack power, 20 piercing, just normal attack. Bolstering Anger. Cost 35 hatred, is insta cast. Groupmates with 100 feet gain a blasting for 8 seconds. For that duration, they will have the block enhanced increased by 35. This is the similar one to the tank, because now we're looking at a defensive support. And also groupmates with 100 feet, they gain an enchantment for 60 seconds. For that duration, they will gain 1 stack of a hand's toughness every 10 seconds. Banish Weakness deals 15% melee attack power, 204 piercing damage to target enemy, dispels 1 affliction from your defensive target if they are within 100 feet. Now we're mixing a little bit the offensive support skills with the tank to create the defensive one. Mind Killer, I think that's a new one. Instacast 50 action points, deals 15% melee attack power and 204 impact damage to target enemy, and applies 1 stack of reduced intelligence and reduced willpower. So basically this is against casters and healers. Spiteful Slam, this is your knockdown. Crushing Anger, cost again 35 hatred instacast. Groupmates gain a blessing for 8 seconds. They will have the critical hit chance increased by 15% during that time. They also will gain an enchantment for 60 seconds, and for that duration they will gain 1 stack of a hand's ballistic skill every 10 seconds. That's for the ranged. Armor of Eternal Servitude. Okay, we're kind of steady on the skills here so far. You gain 3 stacks of a buff for 8 seconds. For the duration you gain 30% dodge per stack, and you lose 1 stack each time you dodge. Tactics are 100% the same as the other 3 hard specializations, but on this specialization you can equip 2-handed polearms. So the tank equips sword and shields, the offensive support dual yield swords, and the defense support 2-handed polearms. Some of the classes you can distinguish what specialization they play from the weapons, some of them, because some of them have, like, I don't know, maybe the Archmage Fire, maybe it's like stuff, and stuff. So some of them is not the same. Your morals are the same ones as the tank. So you have Hedgehog with a hands block. You have Champion Challenge for rooting somebody for 10 seconds. Distracting Bellow. So people cannot receive benefit from cover. And Immaculate Defense, where you give all your groupmates 100 feet, 25 stacks for 20 seconds, granting them 3% damage reduction. And every time they're hit by an ability, they lose 1 stack. If it's a single target ability, they lose 4 stacks until it's gone. And let's say we have something similar here to the offensive. Focused Path Pain reduces the amount of hatred cost whenever you are attacked by one. So whenever people hit you, you use less hatred to use your abilities. Your first tactic that you can choose extra is Stabilize, increasing your mass by 1, so it helps you not to be CC'd very easily. Feeding on Pain, passive with 4 ranks. Restore 1% of your health each time you use a hateful strike. So your basic attack for generating action points. Whenever you use it, you heal 4% of your health. Then you have more points here. Intelligence, Strength if you want them. Wave of Scorn, we get a lot sooner than the offensive support. Cost 35 hatred. Groupmates within 100 feet of you gain a blessing for 8 seconds. For the duration, up to 9 enemies within 30 feet of them will take 3% melee attack power and 40 impact damage every 2 seconds. And also an enchantment for 60 seconds, and for that duration, they will deal, each time they deal damage with the basic attack, they will deal 3% melee attack and 40 piercing damage. Two things to refresh your memories. Those numbers, the 3% melee attack power and 40 piercing, it's 3% of the melee attack power of the Blackguard. So if you are a healer and you don't have a lot of melee attack power, it doesn't take the stats from you. It takes them from the Blackguard, as far as I know. So it's not. It's more powerful than it looks. Choking Fury, morale 1 applies silence. Further down, we got Shielded by Hate. Every 3 seconds, you will gain 800 block rating, and every 30 hate that you have for 3 seconds. But we've explained this earlier. It checks every 3 seconds, and if you have 30, 60, 90 hate, it gives you extra the block thing. Malekith's Bulwark. It's a next tactic. You gain 1,250 corporeal, elemental, and spiritual resistance, but you lose 10% healing received. I'll leave that one to you. Improve basic attack. The passive with 2 ranks, so you can increase the damage of your additional damage of your basic attack by 150%. Distract. Jump the target for the next 3 seconds, interrupting the next ability cast. I kind of like this because it's an interrupt, but you don't have to be smashing it all the time just to get the right thing. As soon as somebody's casting something, you can cast it, and if they do something within 3 seconds, they get interrupted. It's a lot easier on the gameplay, and I like it. Improve Distract. Distract now work up to 23 enemies within 20 feet of the target, as long as the targets don't have cover from you. Converts that into an AoE. You unlock that by getting Distract. Filled with Fury. It's a morale 2. You generate 100 hatred. It comes handy. Soul Killer. Mind Killer will now apply a 5-second affliction to target. For the duration, their outgoing healing is reduced by 33%. That is your healing debuff. Combined with Mind Killer, a tactic. You need the tactic for the healing debuff and Mind Killer, which reduces willpower intelligence. So combine those two. Removing willpower will reduce the healing capabilities of the healer and reduce additionally the 33% healing. So it has double effect. It's stronger healing debuff this way. Engage. It's a passive. Enemies that you deal direct damage will have their outgoing damage reduced by 2% for 5 seconds. Winds of Hatred. Whenever you spend hatred, up to 1 groupmates within 100 feet of you will gain 1 stack of either enhanced corporeal, elemental, or spiritual resistance. It's random which one they will get, but you can buff this up with 4 points, and you can give that to 4 groupmates. You also unlock Winds of Hatred 5 with 1 rank. Winds of Hatred will now apply 2 stacks of all groupmates. So you make that even more powerful. Band Together. A great passive for anything that's defensive. Groupmates with 30 feet of you have their damage reduction increased by 2%. This effect is suppressed for 5 seconds whenever you're hit by a single target ability. You can take this all the way to 5 if you have the points, which I don't. The racial meter's prowess. Morale 3. You gain 50% critical hit chance and accuracy for 20 seconds. Dissipation Expert, your renowned tactic. Whenever you use an ability that removes a buff or debuff, you will gain 15 adrenaline per second for 3 seconds. And next tactic, intrusive strikes. Pitiless strike will now deal 28% less damage, but it will always interrupt an enemy. Exile is your knockback, your punt. Glamour for hatred. Passive with 4 ranks. Okay, thank you. I'll check them out. Thanks, I missed them. Where was I? Glamour of Hatred. You generate 1 adrenaline per second for each enchantment effect from hatred spenders you cast that are active on you. I don't know if it's worth 4 points of adrenaline. Then we have better stuff, or other classes have better stuff to help you out with that, I suppose. Furious Howl. It's a morale 4. Apply silence up to 48 enemies within 30 feet. Before we see the last two, I skipped these 2 tactics by mistake. Disperse the weak. Banish weakness will now no longer deal damage, but now will dispel 1 enchantment from the enemy. In addition, it will dispel 1 cripple from your defensive target. And Endless Pursuit. Whenever you take magic damage, you apply a stack of Bloody Mess to the enemy who dealt it. Oh, nice. Bloody Mess stacks up to 8 times and reduces movement speed by 2% for 6 seconds per stack. Sorry, I missed those 2. Sometimes my eyes skip things. This is good. This defensive support is meant to help you get there and do your damage, so that is excellent. The final 2 skills we got is Get Down, Mr. Malekith. Who chose that name? 35 Hatred, instant cast. Group mates within 100 feet of you gain a blessing for 8 seconds. For the duration, they will have the corporeal, elemental, and spiritual resistance increased by 700. Group mates within 100 feet of you gain an enchantment for 60 seconds. For the duration, they will gain 1 stack of enhanced hardiness for 10 seconds. And again, the Zodiac Blasting ability is the same one as the tanks, where up to 48 enemies within 30 feet of you have their movement speed reduced by 90 for 4 seconds, and this does not affect targets that have cover from you, so you have to position very good. Come on now, if the name seems silly, you know it was me and the lore master just hasn't replaced it. Get down, Mr. President. No, I like it. It's nice when games have little spicy things like that, you know, a little bit of silliness placed properly. It goes a long way. It's a nice thing. And this, ladies and gents, concludes the final hard specialization of the Bleaksword, previously known as the Blackguard. So the Bleaksword has 3 hard specializations: a tank, an offensive support, and a defensive support. The tank is the tank the way you know it. It does all the stuff you know, and it does it well. The offensive support focuses a little bit more on buffing friendlies to do more damage, and the defensive support does exactly the opposite, helps with buffs and debuffs to reduce incoming damage, while it's dealing a certain amount of damage him or herself, both in the offensive and the defensive support. Offensive and defensive supports are very well placed, at least theory as we said before we play the game. If you want to have a little bit more aggressive profile, you take an offensive support with you where it provides some help and DPS. Or if you want to be a little bit more defensive, you take a defensive support where you give you more defensive buffs and nice negative debuffs to the enemy, keep you alive a little bit. It depends how you want to play it. Never ever an offensive support or defensive support will output the same amount of DPS a pure DPS is doing, but the benefits they bring are also super useful. One example we had for the elves yesterday, where you can bring a defensive support that has a little bit of healing, the same way you can bring like a healing witch elf. And if a healer goes down, since all combat reses are part of morale 1, and you can resurrect them very easily because that morale needs time to build up, right? And once you use it, you have to rebuild all the points to have a resurrection. Having a defensive support, which can, let's say, take a 40% healing or 50% healing of what a normal healer would do, it can keep you in the game and buy you the time to build your morale, resurrect your fallen, and keep you going with the extra heal. If you had an offensive support, you had more damage, but you wouldn't have the sustain to stabilize the comeback. So it depends how you want to play it. And I'm saying this because in the previous version, Flame of War Original and Return of Reckoning, those 3 servers, support, CC, and all this, they're used, but they're always on, let's say, second fate, third fate. It's just pushed out. So you prefer to get something that has massive DPS or something that has 100% control and 10% DPS. But here, things, I think personally, things will be changing.